The police officer's words echoed in the sterile, white-walled room, each one a shard of ice piercing my heart. "Mrs. Reynolds, your brake lines were severed. This was no accident." I stared at him, my mind refusing to process the truth. My husband, the man I'd shared my life with for 15 years, the father of my children, had tried to murder me. But in his cold, calculated plan, he made one fatal, arrogant oversight. He never imagined that his own sister, the quiet, unassuming woman he'd always patronized, would become the architect of his downfall. Hello, my darlings, and welcome. I'm Ash. If you're here, you believe that the deepest betrayals often come from those closest to us, and that the most powerful strength is born from the ashes of that betrayal. This is a story that begins with a near-fatal act of malice and ends with a breathtaking act of justice. It's a testament to the unbreakable bonds of sisterhood, both by blood and by choice. If you've ever needed a reminder that you are stronger than you think, and that light will always find a way to pierce the darkest of shadows, then you are in the right place. Don't forget to subscribe and share your own stories of resilience in the comments below. This is the story of how my husband tried to kill me, and how his sister helped me ensure he'll never hurt anyone again. The morning it happened was deceptively ordinary. The sun streamed through our kitchen windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I was rushing, as usual, trying to get our 2 children, Sophie and Ben, fed and out the door for school before my own commute. My husband, Mark, was unusually helpful. He poured my coffee, handed me my keys, and even kissed my forehead, a gesture that had become rare over the past year. "Drive safe, Anya," he said, his voice smooth as silk. The roads might be slick. The concern in his eyes seemed genuine. I now know it was the practiced mask of a psychopath. I remember feeling a flicker of warmth, a foolish hope that perhaps we were turning a corner, that the distance between us was finally closing. I loaded the kids into the car, dropped them at school with hugs and promises of pizza for dinner, and merged onto the highway towards my office. The first sign of trouble was a faint, mushy feeling in the brake pedal when I slowed for a toll booth. I dismissed it, thinking my old sedan was just showing its age. But 10 minutes later, as I began my descent down the steep, winding hill that led into the city, I pressed the brake to control my speed, and the pedal sank straight to the floorboard with a sickening, silent finality. Panic, pure and electric, seized me. I pumped the pedal frantically. Nothing. The car began to pick up speed, hurtling down the incline. The guardrail was a blur on my left, a steep drop on my right. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of terror. I could see the traffic light at the bottom of the hill turning red. A line of cars was stacking up. "God, no," I whispered, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I wrenched the emergency brake, the car shuddering violently, the smell of burning rubber filling the cabin. I swerved into the empty turning lane, the tires screeching in protest, and somehow, by some miracle, the car ground to a halt, the front bumper inches from the rear of a city bus. I sat there, trembling uncontrollably, the sounds of the city, horns, engines, distant sirens, muffled as if I were underwater. A man rapped on my window. "Lady, are you okay? You're white as a ghost." I couldn't speak. I just nodded, tears of shock and relief starting to stream down my face. My first instinct was to call Mark. He didn't answer. I called again. And again. Straight to voicemail. A cold dread, different from the terror of the crash, began to creep into my veins. Then, I called Sarah. Mark's sister. Sarah answered on the second ring, her voice warm and familiar. "Anya." "Hey, what's up?" "The dam broke." I started sobbing, the words tumbling out in an incoherent mess. "My brakes, they failed." The hill." "Mark's not answering." Her tone changed instantly, from cheerful to deadly serious. "Where are you?" "Give me the cross streets." "Don't move. Don't call anyone else." "I'm coming." That last part, "don't call anyone else," should have struck me as odd. But in my shattered state, it felt like a lifeline. Sarah was always the calm in the storm, the pragmatic one. While Mark was the charismatic, ambitious one, Sarah was the quiet, observant soul who remembered birthdays and showed up with soup when you were sick. She arrived within 15 minutes, her face a mask of controlled alarm. She didn't ask a lot of questions. She just hugged me, loaded me into her car, and called a tow truck, directing it to a garage owned by a friend of hers, a man named Frank who she swore was the most honest mechanic in the state. We sat in silence at Frank's garage, on a worn-out vinyl couch that smelled of oil and coffee. I was still shaking, wrapped in a blanket Sarah had pulled from her trunk. Frank, a large, taciturn man with grease under his fingernails, worked for an hour before he came to find us, his expression grim. "Anya, was it?" he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "You need to see this." He led us to the lift where my car was suspended. He pointed a powerful flashlight at the undercarriage. "See these? Brake lines. They don't just fail like this. They're made of reinforced rubber and steel. This," he said, his finger tracing a clean, precise cut, "this was done with a tool. A sharp one. Someone cut your brakes, lady." The world went silent. The hum of the garage faded away. I felt Sarah's hand tighten on my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "You're sure?" Sarah asked, her voice low and steady. "As sure as I'm standing here," Frank replied. "This was no accident. This was attempted murder." The word murder hung in the oily air, suffocating and real. My knees buckled. Sarah held me up. My mind raced, trying to find any other explanation. A disgruntled coworker? A random act of vandalism? But deep down, in a place I didn't want to visit, I knew. The missed calls. The unusual helpfulness. The life insurance policy he'd been nagging me to increase. The distant look in his eyes for months. We drove to my house in a thick, heavy silence. Mark's car was in the driveway. He was home. He met us at the door, his face a perfect portrait of concern. "Anya. My God, I just got your messages. I was in the shower. Are you okay? The car, what happened?" I watched him perform, this stranger I'd married, and I saw it, the tiny flicker of disappointment in his eyes when he saw me standing there, alive and whole. It was there and gone in a nanosecond, but I saw it. "The brakes were cut, Mark," I said, my voice hollow. His face cycled through shock, denial, and then righteous anger with the skill of a seasoned actor. "What? That's impossible. Who would do that? We need to call the police right now." "We will," Sarah said, stepping forward. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were like chips of flint. "But first, Anya and the kids are coming to stay with me for a few days. Until we figure out what's going on." Mark's mask slipped for a full second. Panic. Raw, undiluted panic. "What? No, that's not necessary. We're safer here, together." "I think it's very necessary," Sarah said, her gaze never leaving his. "Don't you?" That night, after I picked up a confused Sophie and Ben from school with a hastily concocted story about a pipe bursting at home, we settled into Sarah's cozy guest room. The kids, thrilled at the prospect of a sleepover at Aunt Sarah's, were soon tucked in bed. Sarah brought 2 glasses of wine into the living room, handed one to me, and took a deep breath. "Anya," she said, "there's something you need to know. I've been suspicious of Mark for a while." She then unspooled a tale that made the cut brake line seem like just the opening act. For the past year, she explained, Mark had been behaving erratically. He'd been asking her strange, hypothetical questions about my life insurance policy and how long it would take for a payout to clear. He'd been withdrawing large sums of cash from their mother's estate, of which he was the executor, offering flimsy excuses about reinvestments. And, most damningly, she had discovered he was having an affair with a junior partner at his firm, a woman named Isabella. I found texts on his old iPad, the one he'd given to Mom, Sarah said, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and guilt. I didn't tell you because I didn't have proof. I didn't want to blow up your life if I was wrong. And I was hoping I was wrong. But the final piece of the puzzle was the debt. Mark, it turned out, had a secret gambling addiction. He had drained his own accounts, taken out massive loans, and had started dipping into our joint savings. The life insurance payout was his only way out. He's not just a cheat, Anya, Sarah said, her eyes glistening with tears. He's desperate. And desperate men do desperate, monstrous things. The pieces of my life, which I had thought were simply falling apart, now rearranged themselves into a horrifying picture of premeditated evil. The late nights at the office. The business trips that always seemed to coincide with my plans. The way he'd encouraged me to take that specific hilly route to work, saying it was more scenic. It was all part of the plan. In that moment, my grief and terror transformed. They hardened into a cold, diamond-hard core of resolve. He had tried to erase me, to make me a footnote in his story of financial ruin and new love. He had tried to orphan my children. He would not get away with it. And so, with Sarah as my general, we went to war. Our strategy was twofold: evidence and exposure. While I played the part of the traumatized, fragile wife, moving back home after a few days under the guise of working on our marriage, Sarah worked the shadows. She used her financial expertise to follow the money, creating a detailed map of his hidden accounts, the loans, the transfers to Isabella. She reached out to old friends, subtly digging for information. I, in turn, became a spy in my own home. I planted a voice-activated recorder in the living room. I checked his phone when he was in the shower, photographing incriminating texts. I became an actress, smiling at his empty kisses, listening to his lies, all while my heart beat a steady rhythm of vengeance. The breakthrough came a month later. Sarah called me, her voice tight with excitement. He's meeting her tonight. At the Glenwood Hotel. Room 214. We had to act. We couldn't wait for him to try again. We drove to the hotel together, a strange sense of calm settling over us. We waited in the parking lot, in the dark, until we saw his car. We saw him, arm in arm with a young, beautiful woman, laughing as they walked into the lobby. Sarah had brought a powerful, long-range camera. We had our evidence. But it wasn't enough. We needed a confession. The next day, Sarah executed the masterstroke. She went to see Mark at his office, wearing a wire provided by a private investigator we had finally, quietly, hired. She played the worried sister, telling him she knew about the debt, about Isabella. She begged him to come clean, to get help, to confess before he did something even worse. And he did. On a crystal-clear audio recording, my husband confessed to his sister. I was trapped, Sarah, he whined, his voice a pathetic snivel. You don't understand the pressure. The loan sharks, they were going to break my legs. I had no choice. And Anya? Sarah asked, her voice carefully neutral. The brakes? There was a long pause. Then, a sigh of resignation. It was the only way. The insurance money, it was enough to cover everything and start over with Isabella. I almost had it. I was so close. I just needed a little more time to figure out a better way. Next time, I'll be more careful. Next time. The coldness of it, the utter lack of remorse, was more chilling than any confession of passion or rage. It was a business calculation. I was a liability to be eliminated. We took our evidence, the audio recording, the financial records, the photos from the hotel, to the police. The arrest was swift. They took him from his office in handcuffs, his colleagues gawking, his perfect life dissolving into a public spectacle. The trial was a nightmare I had to endure for my children. Seeing him across the courtroom, his eyes full of hatred first for me, and then for his own sister, was a special kind of hell. But we stood strong, Sarah and I. We were a united front. He was convicted of attempted murder, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, and grand larceny. The judge, citing the cold-blooded nature of his crime and the clear danger he posed, gave him a sentence that ensured he would be an old man before he ever saw freedom again. In the aftermath, I divorced him. I sold the house that held so many poisoned memories. With Sarah's help, I untangled our finances, secured sole custody of the children, and started over. The kids and I live in a smaller, brighter house now. They know their father did a very bad thing and is in a place where he can't hurt anyone. It's a simplified truth for now, one that will grow in complexity as they do. Sarah lives 10 minutes away. She is more than an aunt to my children, she is their rock, their second mother. We have dinner together several times a week. The bond between us, forged in the fire of her brother's betrayal, is unbreakable. Mark tried to cut my brakes, to send my life careening off a cliff. But in doing so, he severed the last fragile thread of deception. He showed me his true, monstrous self. And in his arrogance, he never once considered that the quiet sister he'd always looked down upon, the one he called too sentimental, would be the one to hold the key to his prison cell. He thought he was getting away with murder. He never imagined his sister would be the one to hand him a life sentence. The most dangerous prisons aren't made of steel and concrete, they are the gilded cages built by those who claim to love us. My story is a stark reminder to trust your instincts, to cherish the true allies in your life, and to never, ever underestimate the power of a woman who has been pushed to the edge. If this story of betrayal, courage, and ultimate justice resonated with you, then please, show this channel some love. Subscribe for more stories of finding strength in the darkest of times, and let me know in the comments about the unexpected allies who have stood by you. Until next time.